Hi, I'm Sean Zerillo here to get you set with some bets for UFC 279 going down on Saturday night in Las Vegas, Nevada. The main event, a welterweight non-title bout between Khamzat Chimaev and Nate Diaz. Diaz big enough of a draw that he can command a pay-per-view main spot in the last fight on his UFC contract. However, Chimaev sitting around minus 1,000 to minus 1,500, depending on the book, across the marketplace. That's an implied probability between 91 and 94%. And it is difficult to get Nate Diaz's win probability above that 10% mark that you would need to justify a wager on his side. Might have substantial power advantage, substantial wrestling advantage. He could probably just control Diaz here for 25 minutes on the mat, but he is a high-paced fighter, finishes very violently and very aggressively, sometimes relatively recklessly. That would be Diaz's one path to victory. If Chimaev cannot get him out of there early, cannot get him out of there in the first 15 minutes, that would be new territory in deep waters for the Russian. Diaz been 5 rounds on multiple occasions, and potentially, if he's able to extend Chimaev, he can get a finish in the final 10 minutes, or at least find a moment that makes him feel good and secures a moral victory like he did against Leon Edwards in their bout as well. But Chimaev, certainly a finisher, going to pursue the finish for as long as he is in there. Curious to see how Diaz approaches this fight. I do have some concerns on the Diaz side as well. Last fight in his UFC contract, as I mentioned, but also looks in the worst physical shape of his career. He's also said in interviews that he stopped training for this fight. And based on his physical shape, it kind of looks like it. So not sure how seriously Nate Diaz is taking this fight. I do expect Chimaev to finish, though, if this goes on and if they end up fighting at all. Chimaev in the under 2.5 rounds, and I think that's a better option than betting his inside the distance prop around minus 400 or minus 450, depending on the book. But if he does secure a finish, it is likely to come early in rounds he is actually competed in a 4. He's likely to maintain that high pace and eventually wilt down the stretch where his finishing upside should diminish as well. If he gets a late finish, it's likely to be from a doctor's stoppage. Diaz has a lot of scar tissue on his face, tends to get cut open the longer his fights go. So potentially a doctor's stoppage late, but if Chimaev does get a finish, I expect the vast majority of the time it does occur in the first half of this fight. Looking at some other bets on this card, I'm going to give out a side and a total that really stood out to me. And in terms of a money line, Dennis Tialulin plus 110 against Jamie Pickett. I think Tialulin has an argument to be a favorite in this matchup. Certainly the better striker. And even though Pickett has the grappling upside, I'm not sure how big the discrepancy is in the grappling skill between these two fighters. Tialulin typically loses when you're able to grapple him, but that is the type of competition that he has been facing throughout his career, the type of game plan he has consistently faced throughout his career. And I thought he actually looked very good in his UFC debut against a very high-level prospect before getting finished. Pickett, not really a high upside fighter, the kind of guy who's going to win his fights by grinding you up against the cage, controlling you for extended periods of time with his cage push, and winning very close decisions where he doesn't have significant margins in any particular round. And given how judges are scoring fights now, prioritizing damage over control, it's possible that Tialulin even gets held against the cage for 80% of this fight, lands the most significant strike in each round, not more significant strikes, but the most significant individual strike in each round, and is able to swing those rounds in his favor. Certainly think he has more finishing upside as well, like his knockout prop around plus 380. But I definitely prefer his money line, even at plus 110, plus 115, would make him around 55% in this matchup. I really don't think Pickett has the tools to seriously threaten him or put him in danger besides sort of blanketing him against the cage for 15 minutes. Dennis Tialulin on the money line at plus 110. In terms of a total, we're going to look at the fight between Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez. Holland currently sitting around minus 190 to minus 200, depending on the book. 7-inch reach advantage for him here, and has secured finishes in both of his 2 welterweight fights since moving down from middleweight. However, this fight taking place at a catch weight of 180 pounds, requested specifically by Daniel Rodriguez, is the smaller fighter, may not need it in terms of cutting weight typically. That said, this actually helps the chin for both fighters. Rodriguez never knocked out in his career, never submitted in his career either. Neither guy a particularly big hitter, though Holland at 170 can sort of overwhelm people with his volume and his length. I don't think his finishing upside is nearly as high as the odds might suggest. This should be a close and competitive affair. Rodriguez is a bit of a junkyard dog, capable of turning all of his fights into close and competitive affairs. That works when he's an underdog more so than it does when he's a favorite, because he's definitely the type of fighter who competes at his level of competition, and it should serve him well here. I think ultimately Holland is too much for him and ends up taking a decision. Interested in the Holland by decision prop around plus 250, projected that closer to plus 200. But what I really like here is either the over 2.5 rounds at plus money, the fight to go to a decision at around plus 140. Projected that goes to decision prop around minus 115 and 54%. So pretty substantial edge relative to current odds, but I'm probably just going to take the over 2.5 at around plus 100 to plus 102, depending upon the book. As I said, I think this line is overrated based on Holland's recent knockout wins. He's not some massive finisher, and Rodriguez seems like a particularly durable opponent, especially when he doesn't have to cut the weight. You can find more of my content and my full betting preview, bets for all 13 fights, up on Action Network.